He spoke. Read that again. Not a press release, not a spokesman. Him. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the man who built Dubai, who has said nothing real since February 28, 2026. Since Iran fired 189 ballistic missiles at the UAE and broke the promise he spent 40 years making. He finally broke his silence. What he said matters. What he didn't say matters more. And the gap between the two tells you everything about what is really happening to Dubai right now. To understand what the speech means, you have to understand what the silence meant. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum is not a silent man. His public communications record is one of the most extensive of any head of government in the Arab world. He writes poetry, published collections of Arabic verse that are taken seriously as literature, rather than dismissed as the vanity project of a powerful man. He maintains a social media presence that reaches tens of millions of followers. He gives speeches at the World Government Summit, at the World Economic Forum, at the international platforms where Dubai's story is told to the audiences whose belief in that story is the economic product the city sells. He has spoken continuously throughout his tenure about Dubai's ambitions, Dubai's achievements, Dubai's future. The record of his public statements is the record of a city being narrated into existence by the man who is simultaneously its ruler and its most committed advocate. After February 28th, he was quiet. Not completely. Not in the absolute sense that a leader who has suffered a personal catastrophe goes quiet. He made the statements that the situation required, the expressions of gratitude to the UAE armed forces for their performance in intercepting the majority of the incoming ordnance, the assertions of the nation's resilience, the declarations that Dubai would not be deterred by those who sought to destabilize the region. But the specific silence, the silence about the departures, about the empty towers, about the real estate correction, about the restaurant closures, about the school withdrawals, about the 900,000 people who are no longer in the emirate that was recording them as residents 12 months ago. That silence was maintained. Until now. The speech that broke the silence was not delivered at a press conference. It was not a formal address to the nation. It was delivered in the specific form that Sheikh Mohammed has always used, when he wants to communicate something important without the formality that invites the scrutiny he is not prepared to address directly. It was delivered at a government forum, in the presence of ministers and advisors and the institutional leadership of the entities that constitute Dubai's economic architecture, in a room where the cameras were present, but the questions were not, where the speech could be reported and interpreted, but not challenged. That choice of venue is itself the first message. A leader who has chosen the forum speaks. A leader who has chosen the press conference answers. Sheikh Mohammed chose the forum. The speech ran for 47 minutes. In Arabic, nor with the formal register that Sheikh Mohammed deploys when he is speaking for the historical record rather than for the social media moment. The English translation circulated through the diplomatic and financial community in Dubai within hours. He began with gratitude to the armed forces, to the civil defense teams, to the first responders whose performance on February 28th and in the days that followed demonstrated, he said, the resilience of the UAE's institutions under pressure that would have broken lesser states. This section of the speech was expected. It was the required opening of any statement about February 28th from any UAE official. Its content was not the content that the financial community was waiting for. The content that the financial community was waiting for came in the speech's second section, in the section that addressed what Sheikh Mohammed called the current challenges facing Dubai's economic model. He acknowledged the departures, not with the word departures, with the phrase population adjustment, the specific euphemism of a government leader who understands that the phenomenon he is describing requires acknowledgement, because the data that reveals it is now in the public domain and denial is no longer a communications option. But who is not prepared to use the language that would convert the acknowledgement into a crisis declaration? Population adjustment. 3 million people leaving a city of 4 million in 12 months is, in the language of Sheikh Mohammed's speech, a population adjustment. No, an adjustment that the speech attributed to a combination of regional geopolitical factors, February 28th, and the natural volatility of a city whose resident base has always been mobile and whose mobility is a feature rather than a vulnerability. The feature rather than a vulnerability framing is the most important sentence in the speech, because it is the sentence that reveals the strategic communication decision that the government has made about how to manage the narrative of what is happening. The strategy is reframing. The departure of 3 million people is not a crisis. It is a demonstration of Dubai's unique characteristic, its mobile, flexible, dynamically adjusting population that responds to geopolitical signals, and then, when those signals resolve, returns. Dubai has always attracted and lost population in cycles. The cycles are the evidence of the city's dynamism, not of its fragility. The framing is not dishonest. It is partial. The cycles that Dubai has experienced before, the 2008 correction, the 2020 pandemic contraction, were followed by recoveries that returned the population to its pre-crisis level and then exceeded it. The framing assumes that this cycle will follow the same pattern. What the framing does not address is why this cycle might be different. What it does not acknowledge is that the 2008 correction and the 2020 pandemic were caused by events external to Dubai's core value proposition, by a global financial crisis and a global health crisis, neither of which specifically targeted the safety guarantee that is the foundation of the city's appeal. This cycle was caused by an event that specifically targeted the safety guarantee, by missiles, by the specific physical, internationally broadcast evidence that the promise of unconditional safety has been tested and has been found to have conditions. The framing does not address this distinction. The speech does not address this distinction. The 47 minutes of the most significant public statement that Sheikh Mohammed has made about Dubai since February contain no acknowledgement that this cycle is different from the cycles that preceded it. The omission is the speech's most important content. The second half of the speech was the plan, the specific policy response to the population adjustment that the first half had acknowledged and reframed. The plan has 7 elements. Each of them is real. Each of them reflects the genuine policy intelligence of a government that has demonstrated repeatedly the ability to identify the correct response to a challenge and execute it at a speed and scale that other governments cannot match. Element 1. The Dubai Economic Agenda. D33, the existing 10-year economic plan that was announced in 2023 with the target of doubling Dubai's GDP by 2033, would be accelerated, not revised, accelerated. The targets that were set for 2033 would be pursued on a timeline that brought the key milestones forward to 2030. The acceleration framing is significant. A government that revises its economic plan downward in response to a crisis acknowledges the crisis. A government that accelerates its economic plan in response to a crisis asserts that the crisis has not changed the direction, only the urgency. The acceleration is the narrative instrument that converts the crisis response into the confidence signal. Element 2. New Golden Visa categories. The existing Golden Visa program, which had already been expanded multiple times since its 2019 launch, would be expanded again. New categories for remote workers, for retirees with specific income thresholds, for the families of existing Golden Visa holders who had not previously qualified in their own right, for investors in newly designated sectors, technology, sustainability, space, that the D33 agenda had identified as priority growth areas. Element 3. Zero corporate tax for new entities, registered in designated sectors for a period of 10 years. The UAE had introduced a 9% corporate tax in 2023, a significant departure from the zero tax environment that had been a defining feature of Dubai's competitive positioning. The new concession offered a 10-year holiday from that tax for specific categories of new entrants, effectively recreating the zero tax environment for the sectors Dubai most wants to attract. Element 4. The Dubai Real Estate Recovery Program, a government-backed initiative that would provide guarantees to qualified investors purchasing real estate in designated development areas. Guarantees that would protect a portion of the investment against the price decline risk that the current market conditions have made a primary concern for potential buyers. The guarantee is the government intervening in the market as a risk absorber of last resort, absorbing the downside risk that the private market is no longer willing to hold in order to restore the transaction volumes that the transfer fee revenue and the broader economy require. Element 5. A new airline route expansion commitment from Emirates. 40 new routes by 2027 into markets that Emirates had not previously served directly and that the government has identified as sources of the next wave of population that Dubai needs to attract. West Africa, Central Asia, secondary cities in India and China and Southeast Asia, where the Dubai story has not yet been fully told to the populations that would find it compelling. Element 6. The Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum City expansion. A new development phase for the master plan city within a city that has been under construction adjacent to downtown Dubai. An expansion that will add residential and commercial inventory, time to absorb the demand that the new golden visa categories and the new airline routes and the new corporate tax holidays are intended to generate. Element 7. The Stability Declaration. The final element of the plan is not a policy. It is a statement, a declaration by Sheikh Mohammed personally, that the UAE's security architecture has been fundamentally strengthened since February 28th, that the air defense systems that performed on that night have been supplemented with additional layers, that the diplomatic framework that protects Dubai's neutrality has been reinforced through bilateral agreements with powers whose security guarantees add weight to the UAE's own defense capabilities. The Stability Declaration is the element that matters most, because every other element of the plan depends on it. The Golden Visa expansion only attracts new residents if they believe the destination is stable. The real estate guarantee only restores transaction volumes if buyers believe the asset they are buying is in a city that will be there in 10 years. The airline routes only generate the demand that fills them if the passengers they bring choose to stay. The Stability Declaration is the government saying, the promise is still intact. The guarantee still holds. What happened on February 28th was a test, and the test was passed. And the financial community heard the declaration. It updated its models. The models still show what the models showed before the speech. The population is down 900,000. The transaction volumes are down 71%. The RevPAR is down 41%. The declaration is the intention. The numbers are the reality. The gap between them is the question that the speech answered without answering. The 47 minutes of Sheikh Mohammed's speech contains 7 elements of a plan and 1 reframing of a crisis, and 0 acknowledgments of the structural question that the crisis raised. The structural question is this: Dubai's competitive advantage over Singapore and Zurich and Lisbon and every other jurisdiction that competes for the mobile capital that Dubai was built to attract was always the combination of zero tax and world-class infrastructure and unconditional safety. Not any one of those 3, all 3 simultaneously. The tax efficiency compensates for the regulatory restrictions. The infrastructure compensates for the geographic remoteness from cultural centers. The unconditional safety makes both of those compensations worth making. Remove the unconditional safety, and the compensation calculus changes. The tax efficiency is still real, but Singapore offers 17% corporate tax, and Lisbon offers the non-habitual resident regime, and Switzerland offers the lump sum taxation arrangement. None of them zero, but none of them zero plus Iranian missiles either. The infrastructure is still extraordinary, but Singapore's infrastructure is comparable, and Zurich's infrastructure is superior in the specific dimensions: financial market depth, institutional stability, rule of law independence, that the category of capital Dubai most wants to attract values most. The unconditional safety was the thing that made Dubai's offer irreplaceable, the thing that justified paying the premium, the service charges on the empty apartment, the private school fees, the cost of living in a city where everything from groceries to ground transport runs at the premium that a premium address commands. The speech does not address what happens to the competitive offer when the unconditional safety is no longer unconditional. It addresses the policy response, the new visa categories and the new routes and the new tax holidays. It does not address the underlying question of whether those policy responses are sufficient to restore the belief that the policy responses are designed to attract. Belief cannot be restored by policy. Policy can create the conditions in which belief might gradually rebuild, in which the accumulation of months and years of stability produces the institutional memory that overrides the memory of February 28th in the calculation of the mobile capital that Dubai needs to return. Mind that rebuilding takes time, more time than the D33 acceleration timeline implies, more time than the 7-element plan suggests, more time than the speech acknowledges. The speech does not acknowledge the time. The speech implies urgency, the acceleration, the new categories, the immediate deployment of all available policy tools. Urgency implies that the solution is near, that the plan will work quickly. The solution is not near. The plan will work eventually. Whether eventually is soon enough is the question that the 47 minutes do not answer, because the 47 minutes cannot answer it honestly without undermining the confidence signal that the 47 minutes are designed to produce.